Hi everybody. I think this is an important issue that everybody needs to wake up to now. I think things have gone too bad in this country. They're too far way down the line for people to be blasé about things anymore because, the hypocrisies and the crimes and the horrors are just really too blatant to ignore, and especially we have to think about the next and upcoming generation that are going to be expected to take on board all this criminal activity and horror that have become so apparent in the world. And last year, David Cameron informed everybody of his plans to ban free speech and protest, basically, because that's what it amounts to. He's decided that there's this new crime called non-violent terrorism, which apparently, as he stated before the United Nations, includes people who question the official conspiracy theory put forward by the establishment in concern of 9/11 and 7/7, which we do know that there are factual errors in their reports, their official reports, and all evidence does actually suggest that there were inside elements of government and intelligence and possibly even military involved in those attacks. Basically, internal tyranny, as Mr. Anthony Farrell of South Yorkshire Police rightfully stated in his terror threat assessment report that he was asked to write in 2010, and subsequently got dismissed from his job for and lost all his pension. And we're informed that the maximum sentence could be up to 10 years in prison for breaking a banning order, and the banning orders would be anybody who's considered a non-violent terrorist, as obviously somebody like myself would be. You only have to look through my videos. Then, if I put something up on the internet, or if I gave a public speech, 10 years in prison. Okay, and that'll be statutory. Like breaking the rules of the family courts, there's statutory penalties. So, David Cameron's very, very concerned about these non-violent terrorists. Okay. And I, as a member of the British public and a Mackenzie Angel, are very concerned about the real violent terrorist threat posed to British children by criminal and murderous paedophiles who are operating in every British authority. Now, there's no getting away from it. They are there. Okay? It's not a fantasy. It's not a suspicion. We know for a fact that they are there. Okay? And it all has been documented in the Child Safety Report. And here we have all the official government reports that we've dug up that were buried, including the Ofsted reports, about all the risks that children face in care and the actual crimes that children have suffered in care. Children going missing in care. Incest from forced adoptions where people of the same family end up getting married because they didn't know that the person they was marrying was actually a family member because they'd been forcibly adopted as a child. Deaths in state care. Okay. Child abuse in care. Unregulated private childcare providers. They are unregulated. High Court precedents that actually have delivered an abomination of justice to children in Britain. The very justice that the EU Child Protection Directive seek to provide to the children of Europe. Britain has delivered an abomination of them. And that is a legal fact. There's no getting around it. There's no getting away from it. Justice Porfley's judgment on the High Court, on the Hampstead case at the High Court, is legally an abomination of EU child protection directives. And then we've got the UN Committee on the Rights of the Child report in 2014, you know, and we have that up here. Here it is. It states very, very clearly the very serious risks to children in Britain posed by a country that refuses to implement EU child protection directives. Okay, they refuse. Why? Why are you refusing? And, you know, I've written this Facebook note, which basically just asks the question, are children safe in Britain? Okay? And it is based on the United Nations Child Protection Committee report that was published in early July last year. And these are the criminals and crimes they identify. Professional and business status abusers, many with connections to charities abroad, are able to operate with impunity without fear of arrest. Very low arrest rates, investigations and convictions in proportion to the scale of the crimes. Child witness victims receiving very low quality care and attention from authorities. Inappropriate interviewing rooms and techniques. Onus of proof placed on victims instead of suspects. Children reporting crimes have no independent legal guardian. Child victims of abuse who are trafficked from abroad are placed in bed and breakfast accommodation. Child victims of abuse and trafficking convicted as criminals for prostitution or being in possession of illegal drugs. Failure of British authorities to recognise that a child is child until 18 years old. And these are the crimes that they identified as prolific throughout the state party, London, as are follows. Child trafficking, thousands trafficked into London every year. Child sex tourism, London is a global capital. Making and selling of child pornography, child prostitution, sexual, physical, psychological and emotional abuse of children, grooming of children for abuse, introducing children to addictive and illegal drugs, child slavery, selling of children's organs, ritual abuse and murder of trafficked children and babies, hundreds every year. The UNCP committee report is established on in-depth study by multiple experts and professionals. The crimes they report are not a fantasy. The situation is abominable, as is the abomination of justice that the London High Court, presided over by Mrs. Justice Porfley, delivered to 2 British children in 2015 who reported suffering many of the crimes listed above. Child sex tourism, child prostitution, ritual sexual abuse and murder of trafficked babies perpetrated by multiple professionals and business people operating as a ring in central London. Now, I've left 2 video links here and I will leave them at the end of this video, and I do suggest everybody who watches this video watches these 2 videos. With no remotely adequate investigations, all of those allegations were dismissed as false by the London UK High Court. The judgment was based on retractions given by both child witnesses who were at the time in care and control of alleged abusers, and in whose care and control they have been since they reported the crimes committed against them to London authorities during late August and early September 2014. And now I draw your attention to the EUCP directives, which state very clearly that retractions are not enough to close an investigation, especially not one involving crimes of such serious proportions as identified by the United Nations. And here, David Cameron, have a look at the child protection directives. The medical professional who stated that the children's allegations need to be taken very seriously in light of her medical findings that both children had suffered long-term repeated sexual abuse, was dismissed by the High Court as an over-dogmatic expert. In her summary, Justice Porfley states that anyone who believes the children are evil and foolish and that children were coached and under the influence of the book The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe. Perhaps instead the children had simply read the UN report. Is that a fairy tale? EU child protection directives believe the children until prompt and thorough investigations prove otherwise. So too does the UN Child Protection Committee. Are they evil and foolish? Who is evil and foolish here? People who stand up for a child's rights to justice? Or those who are happy to live with an abomination of justice for children? Think about it. And yes, I am asking people, get active, write to your MP, send the link to this note and I will leave it under this video, or copy it, send and paste onto an email. Send it to write to them. All you need to do is type your postcode in here, because this is serious and cannot be ignored by anyone who considers themselves human. So David Cameron, in light of your concerns about people talking about their opinions that 9/11 and 7/7 official reports do not match the facts and the evidence, okay, and you're worried about them, well, we are worried about our children. And the fact that the state, the British state, cannot protect them. And you know, 2 weeks after we published our child safety report, okay, here's Jackie Long.
Editor Jackie Long is with us. So will today's developments get children's services back on track?
Well, children in care, the clue is in the title. Children taken into the care of the state, mainly because abuse and neglect at the hands of their own family. The state is effectively their parent, and it is clear today, and it has been clear for some time, that that parent, the state, is failing in its most basic duty towards these children, unable even to keep them safe from harm, as we heard in Jane's piece.
There we go. Unable even to keep the children safe from harm. That is the situation that we are in right now. Okay. And here we have on this morning show, this was Denise Robertson in tears over a couple that she knows that couple did not abuse their children. They have lost all their children. They have not had them returned. And on this show, this lady, she shares the truth. Okay? And on this show they state very clearly, never has there been a case where where an adoption has been overturned in Britain. And not long after this show, in August, there we have it. You know, Justice Porfley, again, has to return a child to her parents. After that child had been forcibly adopted on grounds of future emotional risk. Here it is. Okay? On the grounds of future emotional risk, that girl was taken from her parents at 4 years old, and she suffered extradition into the care of strangers to Ghana, where she suffered extreme abuse. Why is this case not equally as important as a precedent as that of Baby P? And now we say, as Justice Porfley, according to Justice Porfley, this was something no professional involved at the time could envisage. Really? Well, now it has happened. Now it must be envisaged. We do not know what has happened to these children that have been forcibly adopted. Nobody is checking up on their welfare. And now we have reports of 2 children who are claiming that social workers in Britain are taking babies off poor people and killing and eating them. And not only that, they are also involved a paedophile ring involved in trafficking babies into Britain, specifically for ritual abuse and murder, which is stated in the United Nations report, and I direct you to paragraph 30. Here it is. It's all written down. The committee is strongly concerned that thousands of children continued to be trafficked every year into the State Party, London, particularly for sexual exploitation and labour, and it expresses its deepest concerns about the reports that hundreds of children have been abducted from their families in Africa and trafficked to the State Party for brutal religious rituals such as the so-called voodoo and juju rituals. And the Hampstead children were lying. Well, this video explains 20 facts. 20 facts that shame the whole of the British authorities in delivering justice to children. How dare you, in light of the UN report. And what you put those 2 children through is despicable beyond belief. And you have the audacity, David Cameron, to talk about non-violent terrorists. Well, this is where the babies are coming from.
Zuma, and this is just at the heart of Owerri. This very war will continue. I will continue with unrelenting stamina to ensure that all these miscreants are not only identified but are exposed.
The Imo State Police Command is warning the general public to keep an eye on their teenage girls so they do not fall prey to miscreants, as they do not mean well for youth in the society. In the meantime, Mr. James Ezuma will have to remain in the custody of the police till investigations are concluded.
We still believe this baby of a baby girl
told me that the baby will be pregnant, and
these 15 teenagers work in a single line led by the so-called baby factory operator.
Yes, sir. Everything. Yes, sir.
The story of these teenagers are no doubt scary, but it's child's play considering that they have been rescued by the police.
Can you talk to us from
19-year-old Inachi Chinaza from Ebonyi State is, however, not so lucky.
I got pregnant, and when the guy that impregnated me denied it. And when I was 3 months pregnant, I decided not to abort the baby. Then I decided to look for a homeless home where I can keep the baby after delivery. When I came to Abia State, someone directed me to a Zuma private hospital. When I got there, the doctor told me that the baby will be kept for me after I've delivered, and it will be taken care of by them. I didn't know that the baby would be sold out. So on 24th of November 2013, I gave birth to a bouncing baby girl that was promised to be given 100,000 naira.
I'm a medical doctor, and this.
Okay. That lady, that 19-year-old girl, okay, she has had a baby. Basically, she was on her own. She was pregnant. She decided to keep her baby and try to give it a home and be a mother. And instead, she was taken to this centre, which, as they say at the beginning, it comes across as a really...
It is right in the centre of Owerri, the Imo State capital. The signpost, Ezuma Women and Children Rights Initiative.
There you go. Women and Children's Rights Protection Initiative. And this is where they're getting the babies from. They're coming to Britain, they're going all over the world. Some of them hopefully do end up in good and loving homes. But a lot of them, they are not being trafficked to end up in good and loving homes. And we know that for a fact. And the United Nations has informed us about it as a fact. And then meanwhile, as Denise Robertson explains about the family courts, and I'll just play you as a few minutes of this video.
I think there's a perception out in the public that you don't have your children taken away unless you've done something wrong.
Yeah.
And I know that you do. And let me emphasise, I couldn't believe more in adoption. I brought up 4 children I didn't give birth to. I know the love that can grow between adoptive parents and children. But they deserve something better than to be given stolen goods. You do not heal the hole in one family by creating a hole in another unless you have to. And children do have to be taken away. I appreciate that. And I'm very concerned, and I've tried in the book, to pay tribute to social workers who up and down the country are doing jobs that some of us would shirk and going into situations that some of us would shirk, and they're doing a wonderful job. But I'm afraid the fact that it's working there doesn't excuse the fact that it isn't working here. Last year, I heard from 450 people who told me they'd had their children taken away for no reason. Now, I'm not daft. I'm quite sure some of them weren't telling me the truth. But if only 1% of them, Janet, was telling me the truth, that's 5 children taken from loving arms and given to strangers.
But Denise, isn't the problem with all of this that a lot of this takes place, all this removal of children goes through the family courts and they're secret?
Yeah, absolutely. You put your finger right on it. When the family courts came in, I welcomed them. I thought, we're going to have an environment that's there to help. I now liken them to the Star Chamber. And what happens there, I've never pushed for the press to be admitted because some of the evidence, frankly, that's given there is so skewed, there's no point in reporting it.
Well, what would you like to see happen?
What I'd like to see is, you will never hear me ever make a noise about the child being initially taken. Because where there's a scintilla of doubt, you remove the child to a place of safety.
Well, they say social workers, they're damned if they do, damned if they don't, often,
but
aren't
after that, there must be a proper appeals process. And this crazy thing that they want to do, to bring in the 26-week limit, at which time a child must have gone into adoption forever.
That's
that
very
is
fast,
plainly
isn't it?
wrong.
So there you go. You know, I mean, Denise there, she summed up the situation perfectly. You know, there is a problem of children who do suffer abuse at home and they do need help. And there is the fact that a lot of people who work in child protection are genuinely good people. And honestly, I really do not. I hope that you people that are doing your best, and I know it is a difficult job that you do not take offence at this video. And instead support us, support the child rights, support EU child protection directives, because believe you me, they will be making your job 100% easier and more fluid, okay? And they will help you to identify children with real risks who do face the true risks. But this problem of removing children from genuinely loving homes on the grounds of a future emotional risk that often really has no solid ground or foundation is despicable beyond belief, and the amount of damage it's causing to children and families, it is truly terrible. And the fact is that the parents involved are gagged. And I'm working now with a lady, I can't mention her name or the exact details of her case. I can only say to you that she's got 4+ children who have all been removed from her loving family home that she's provided. She's a professional working mum. Okay, and all her children have been removed on spurious grounds related to messy divorce proceedings. Okay, absolutely nothing to do with her abusing the children. And all the children have been taken. Some of them are now up for forced adoption. This can happen to anybody. Anybody. Doesn't matter what your professional status is. Your children, if they get targeted, they will be taken. And the authorities that have taken this lady's children are the exact same authorities who ignored the Hampstead case. And this gentleman here, hats off to him. He's an American citizen, a professional man. He knows what he's talking about. Again, I'll leave you this video. Watch this video. And he explains very, very clearly the protocols that were ignored in assessing the risk to children and identifying crimes and criminals. Okay? Because we cannot live with that level of threat to children. And basically, if a child's in care, well, anything can happen to them. Because, you know, a child carer can run over a child's foot. Yes, they can. They can run over a child's foot. A child in their care can be found wandering along the North Circular Road. Okay? Nothing's going to happen to them. Nobody is going to listen to the children once they are in authority care. And here we have it. You know, a G4S guard, because don't forget, G4S, they are running thousands of privatised childcare facilities in Britain. Okay? Because it's all been privatised. He fatally restrains a 15-year-old and gets promoted. Yeah. 100 kilogram guard who fatally restrains a 40-kilogram boy. What do we do with him? Oh, promote him to health and safety manager at G4S Children's Homes. And why did they do that? Because the little boy had refused to clean a toaster and he was sent to his room. Naughty boy. And then they tried to take his mother's telephone number off him. A scrap of paper. The officer alleged that Gareth said, "You're not fucking taking that, and don't take my mum's phone number." Gareth is then said to have clenched his fist and swung it at David Badnall, who stood at over 6 feet tall and weighed over 16 stone. And that little boy died. Because they were trying to take his mother's phone number off him. Now, and he gets promoted, and my friend has lost all her children who she genuinely loves, and she's provided a beautiful home for them, and she's even put in trust investments to make sure to pay for her children's education when they get older, and they've all been taken off her on spurious grounds of a future emotional risk, and this fucker gets promoted. Well, do you know what, David Cameron? I tell you now, it's going to be pitchforks outside Parliament until we get justice for children in Britain, because we will have these child protection directives implemented fully, whether or not Britain stays in Europe. Okay? So do not think for one moment that leaving the European Union will save you and your paedophile friends. Because we are going to have these, and we are going to address this issue in our life, here and now. Because we are not going to tolerate these levels of abuse that mean that London is the international capital of trafficked babies and children. And we've got professional people murdering them in ritual abuse. Well, I'm very, very sorry if the Hampstead children have come forward and pushed a few people's noses out of place on their fucking faces. because you are going to stand up now, all you people in child protection, in all the child protection authorities in Britain. You are going to stand up now, and you are going to ask questions, because I tell you now, whoever is standing against the child's rights can fuck off out of this country, okay? Who is evil and foolish here? People who stand up for a child's rights to justice, or those who are happy to live with an abomination of justice for children? Think about it. Yes, think about it, David Cameron. Because, you know, if you're so concerned about your fucking non-violent terrorists, we are very concerned about their paedophile, baby-eating murderers working in child protection and London police, and actually throughout the whole of Britain. Because, you know, it is stated very, 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 very clearly in this report, and unfortunately it is towards the end of it, that we do highlight the fact that children in Britain are suffering a massive risk from our own authorities. Okay? Our own authorities. And even British MPs have come forward to state all councils across England now needed to review child protection policies. This is the MP's report. On the evidence we took, the alarming conclusion is that Rotherham was not an outlier, and that there is a widespread problem of organised child sexual exploitation in England. That's from your MPs. Well, we've had enough, okay? And you can talk about your non-violent terrorist threat to your lying official reports. Well, I'm talking about the real violent terrorist threat against our children and any child who enters Britain, especially trafficked children. Trafficked children, the most vulnerable children on earth. And your authorities, refused even to investigate. You could not even investigate. Why? What? Because they're black children? Because they're from Africa? Or they're from poor people in Britain? Yes, I heard Ian Duncan Smith called the British public stock on national television at the Tribunal in 2013. And you think that we're animals and our children are animals, that your so-called society can eat and murder, abuse and sell? Well, you are in for a fucking shock, because I've had enough, and so have a lot of people in this country. Because if you think for 1 minute we are going to sit by to be ruled by children, child abusers, you have got another thing coming. And all of you are going down. And there will be a divide in this country. There will be a divide between the people who stand up for children's rights and people who are prepared to sit by and let children get abused and murdered by monsters. And that's all I've got to say to you, David Cameron. So you better fucking wake up. Thank you. And thank you to all who have listened. I'm very sorry for my expression of anger and my swearing. I am sorry, but I have spoken from my heart.